I just thought about doing a joke intro like, welcome back to Is Luke Happy? Like Luke Skywalker, because we were so heavy about. But then your name is Luke, so it would be like not the same. So sad. Is Leia happy?
Is Anakin happy?
No. He's not. He's worse than Fitz on scale of angst. I feel like he's the golden standard and Fitz is below that. Only slightly.
Welcome back to another episode of Is Fitz Happy? I'm Luke.
And I'm Emma.
And this week we're discussing Chapter 5, Gambit.
Yes.
Yes. Yes, we are.
I don't have anything funny to say about Gambit, so. Except the Queen's Gambit, which is a chess move, because I'm now literate in chess moves, thanks to Netflix. Anyway.
So the intro of this is about ancient code of conduct and being honorable to other people and guest rights and things like that. And it's just a little short blurb like, warrior's word is still his bond, and among those who serve side by side there's nothing so foul as one who lies to his comrades or leads them into dishonor.
Little hint
reminder
towards for the end of the chapter.
Yeah, exactly.
But I like the sentiment that it says here, but I would venture that we have not wandered so far from those customs, so much as put a veneer over them. I just like that sentiment of maybe we think we're different from the past people, but really we've just made the rules a little prettier sounding.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's just kind of how the world works.
So winter is deepening around Buck, and Fitz's depression is deepening. Pretty much at the same time. He's pretty forlorn, and he's calling on Kettricken like Chade said, but they're both lonely and not doing anything and don't want to do anything about that.
Yep, they're sulky.
Yep, and they're just kind of
getting on each other's nerves.
Yeah. Fitz doesn't want to spend too much time with Night Eyes because he doesn't want to bond him, and he doesn't have anything else to do, so he kind of leans towards spying on Molly.
Because that's exactly what will get him out of the funk, obviously.
Right, yeah. But he, is dreaming about her, and he's, following her, knows where she lives now, and, talking to some of the other maids to get news of her, maybe by happenstance.
Right.
And
I think it's so weird that he doesn't find anything weird about this behavior. I mean, he knows that he shouldn't be doing it, but I think he knows he shouldn't be doing it because he would get in trouble with Patience, not because it would probably be weird for Molly.
Right.
And also, how does it look if you are ignoring and not meeting up with Molly, but you know who her friends are and you're specifically seeking them out and talking to them? You don't think Molly's going to catch on that and that might just look bad, worse, oh, I came here and lied to you about who I was and I'm never going to marry you and now I'm going to flirt with your coworkers. I mean, obviously he's not, but that's how Molly could be taking it.
Right, yeah. And it says that, he yearned after her hopelessly. Sleep eluded me and food held no interest for me. Nothing held any interest for me. It really shows he's fallen down pretty hard here.
Yeah. Well, the only hope he had coming back was maybe I'll get Molly.
True. Yeah. Otherwise he was going to ditch Bucky.
Yep.
But Burrich finds him kind of just sitting in the guards room and shoves his feet off of a bench and sits down and says, "Hey, what's the problem with you, man?"
And then quieter. Have you had another seizure? I love the dad move of I'm going to be tough and gruff and what's wrong with you? But actually, is there something wrong with you? Are you okay?
Yeah.
He's really concerned, but also not 100% sure if it's something he should be concerned about.
Right.
It is Fitz we're talking about.
And Fitz is no, not another seizure, but it's Molly. And Burrich doesn't know anything about it, so he's like, "Oh, you haven't been able to find where she's gone then, because he still
Yeah.
thinks that she was missing at Silt Bay or whatever. Because
Right.
Fitz doesn't talk about anything that's going on, and he just sinks into depression and, deals with it in a very
Unhealthy way.
unhealthy way, yes. And Fitz's response to that is, no, she's here at Buckkeep, working as a maid for Patience. But Patience won't let me see her, she says. Burrich's eyes had widened at my first words. Now he glanced around us, then tossed his head at the door. Burrich's first chance of when he hears, like, no, Molly's here, I just, like, am forbidden from seeing her, from Patience and stuff, is like, oh, it's actual girl problems and not like your friend is missing. It's like, oh, okay, we need to go somewhere privately and just drink.
Yeah. Well, shouldn't that have been his response if she was still missing, though? I mean,
yeah, true.
Not shouldn't, but like, wouldn't that have?
Yeah, maybe.
But I guess if it was like missing someone, it's easier to commiserate with other people around. Whereas if it's personal love life details, you don't want everybody in the keep gossiping about it.
Right, yeah.
So
he brings them back to the stables and they have some brandy and fix some leather.
he had his perpetual pile of harnesses to be mended, which I laughed a little bit at that line. Because it is kind of true that he's always mending some harness. Like, what are the nobles doing?
This Molly, I've seen her then, in the washer courts with Lacey, carries her head proud, red glint to her coat. Her hair, I corrected him grudgingly. Nice wide hips, she'll bear easily, he said with approval. I glared at him. Thank you, I said icily. He shocked me by grinning. Get angry. I'd rather you were that than self-pitying. So, tell me. And I told him.
So do you think he's purposefully being kind of rude about Molly
And
to get him
crass,
mad? Okay.
Yeah, I do.
I would like to think so too. I don't like the idea that this is how Burrich talks about women.
I don't think it is, but I'm sure that in the guards room where he was around all the time.
That's how.
Yeah. But also there are women in the guards and they probably give the same crap back. So
Right.
It
But
just bringing that shift of tone to this
that's
conversation probably just is enough to startle Fitz.
True. Get him out of his mopey.
Yeah.
But also, it's like weird to hear him talk about Molly this way because we know in the end they end up married and having kids. So I guess he's right about the hips.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's not thinking about that now,
No. Yeah.
but, something that we know.
And Fitz tells the whole thing and says, so what should I do? And Burrich brought him back to drink and for Fitz to tell the story because he knew that he needed someone to listen to. And Burrich is kind of rubbing that in right now, like, oh, you think I should give you advice? You asked me, of course, because you have noted of my rare success at providing myself with a fond wife and many children. The bitterness in his voice shocked me, but before I could react to it, he gave a choked laugh. Forget I said that. Ultimately, the decision was mine and done a long time ago.
I have a couple things to say about this. Number one, Burrich is not that old. He is not too old to have a wife and kids.
Yeah, he's probably 40s.
You think he's in his 40s? I guess Fitz is 15, but he was like
26 or something, I thought we decided when he
got Fitz.
Oh, so he'd be like
Yeah,
upper
like-
30s then, 36, 37.
Which is pretty young.
Yeah.
And still marriageable age. I guess like in modern times.
It's probably
very
like
much
15 years off of when he was probably looking.
true. But it's just like it's like funny to me that he's like, it's long past and it's fine. I'll just die a spinster. Like, it's funny to see that in a male character and not just a woman who is like not that old saying, I'm gonna die alone. But also, I think it's important that he does take this moment to be a guardian to Fitz, and it shows that Fitz really trusts Burrich and that he enjoys being here because it feels like home to him, and this is the safest place he's ever known. And I just think that's really cute that they get to have this touching. Finally, there's no misunderstanding between them holding back this bond,
Right.
and they can just be themselves and accept the love that the other person is giving, the fatherly love that is going between them, which is good.
One thing I do want to say about this is, his decision long ago was probably about patience. It comes up a little bit, a little bit later in this section that we're going to be talking about, but kind of going back on a conversation we had in previous episodes of Burrich being talked about by the women, but never really having women around or anything like that.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to come back to this. Just remember that thing. I think this is about patience, and I'll talk about it in a little bit.
Okay, I know where you're going to bring it up.
Okay.
I think.
Yeah. And Burrich gives some advice here, like you were saying. Fitz is like, what should I do? And Burrich's like, what do you think you should do? Where did it go wrong in the first place? You said that you were courting her like a boy, so be a man.
Mm-hmm.
Take care of yourself.
Yes.
You're looking like garbage.
Take a shower.
Little trash boy.
Try some deodorant.
Shave, maybe.
Maybe.
He says, look at yourself. Your hair looks like a pony's winter coat. I'll wager you've worn that shirt a week straight, and you're thin as a winter foal. I doubt you'll regain her respect that way. Feed yourself up, groom yourself daily, and eat his name. Get some exercise instead of moping about the guard room. Set yourself some tasks and get onto them. Right before this, he says something that is probably incredibly true, especially if he was talking to, Molly's friends and stuff. It says, you cannot see her. If I know anything of women, it does not mean she does not see you. Keep that in mind.
Yep.
Or has those same friends that he's talking to, hoping for, some talk of Molly bringing back, we talked to the Fitz today. And
Exactly what I'm saying. See, he needs to think this through instead of, this little nugget of potential news about Molly, who I'm not talking to, is so much better than the idea that maybe this could be misconstrued, which is the problem in the first place, Fitz. Hello?
Fitz is like, it's not going to do me, good in the long run if Patience will still not permit me to see Molly. And Burrich's like, he doesn't quite understand what Fitz is getting at here.
Right.
Because he's like, in the long run, it's not about you and Patience, it's about you and Molly. Like, eventually, like, you guys can get together. It's not just Patience keeping you apart.
Well, I think at this point, Burrich thinks it's like a thing about, where Fitz is politically. Like,
Right.
Patience just doesn't want him to marry a servant. Not anything besides that in his head, probably.
Yeah. And Fitz then chimes in with, the thing that really gets him and says it's also up to King Shrew.
Mm-hmm.
According to Patience, a man cannot be sworn to a king and give his heart fully to a woman as well. You cannot put two saddles on one horse, she told me. This from a woman who married a king in waiting and was content with whatever time he had for her. I reached to hand Burrich the mended halter. He did not take it. He had been in the act of lifting his brandy cup. He set it down on the table so sharply that the liquid leaped and sloshed over the edge. She said that to you? He asked me hoarsely. His eyes bored into me. I nodded slowly. She said it would not be honorable to expect Molly to be content with whatever time the king left to me as my own. Burrich leaned back in his chair, a chain of conflicting emotions dragged across his features. He looked aside into the hearth fire, and then back at me. For a moment, he seemed on the verge of speaking. Then he sat up, drank off his brandy in one gulp, and abruptly stood. It's too quiet up here. Let's go down to Buckkeep Town, shall we? And this is why I wanted to say it was probably about Patience. Mm-hmm. First of all, in the last chapter, when we were discussing this, maybe 2 episodes ago, when Patience was speaking to Fitz and said that quote, we assumed that it was about chivalry.
Yeah.
When I was reading through into this, I realized we were wrong about that, and we also got a message, thank you, listener, reminding us that this was about Burrich as well. Mm-hmm. So this is something that Burrich decided long ago, that a man can't have 2 saddles, and has made the decision and told Patience, like, we can't be together because my time has to be dedicated to chivalry. I can't, like, I've tried, but I need to be there for chivalry and my king.
Oh, interesting.
And now we can't be courting or whatever. And that's why Patience is remembering that. Later on, she mentioned something like, oh, you always remember your first love. And I think that's when they were crying over Burrich. Molly and Patience were crying over Burrich after he had passed away. And I think there's still that little hint of like, you know, he was my first love. He said no because you can't have two saddles on a man. And she passed on that knowledge to Fitz. And hearing it come from Fitz, from Patience, really gets Burrich in the mood to go drinking.
Right. Well, also it would kind of sting because he's basically Fitz's dad at this point, and he's like he sees that his son loves somebody, and like as long as she's a decent person, he doesn't care. And then all of a sudden he's like, I can't ever be with her because of your rule. And he's like, oh no, like that shouldn't be that shouldn't stop you from your true love. And
it's his same, like, not necessarily mistake, but decision tormenting the person he raised.
Yeah. No, it's sad, kind of, but also like his own fault. But then I wonder, does that mean that chivalry was better because he's not technically sworn to the king because he is the king? So that's why she could put up with chivalry?
Yeah. And I think chivalry, since he was so delighted and did make that decision of like, I'm actually just going to marry Patience. I don't care what you say, Dad.
True.
It really showed like that dedication and stuff like that. I don't know. So I'm sure he made time for her. The next day, he's hungover.
Yep.
But he was able to ignore his pounding head.
Well, he's like 15, so yeah, I'm sure he can. I'm sure it's a real bad hangover.
I'm jealous. He drinks a lot of brandy in this chapter, honestly.
I mean, hey, you like what you like, you know?
Good old Sand Sedge brandy, I'm sure. And he sets himself to, become a better person. He starts exercising, he sets tasks ahead of him, he bathes, all sorts of good stuff.
I like that is your last one because that is true, but also so funny that he really hasn't been bathing, which really does feel teenage boy. Like, I mean, I remember high school, freshman boys stink. So I'm glad that he got some sense knocked into him.
And he's also regaining, oh my gosh. Emma's sitting here mouthing sense and pointing to her nose. Like
sense
she's
knocked into him.
Real clever.
I'm very clever. Thank you for noticing. For nose sitting.
That was so bad. Moving on. He's also trying to regain stamina because after his sickness, he never tried to, get back to where he was previously.
Right. He kind of just gave up.
Yeah, definitely just gave up. Patience is, telling him that his color's better. Lacey's delighted and feeding me at every opportunity. And he begins to feel himself again. Ate with the guards, went to the stables to work there, and he was taking true delight in that because before the Mountain Kingdom, he was denied being in the stables at all. And even though it kind of hurts seeing Hans and Burrich work together of running the stables, it still gives him a little bit of pleasure just to see like it's in good hands kind of thing.
I also want to talk about this moment specifically of Hans and Burrich working so well and it being a little bit of a jealous issue with Fitz. He says, he's talking about how it hurts a little to see them not include him in conversations when it's busy, but he understands. I had moved on to another life. I could not accept the old one to be held ajar for me forever. And he gets this with understanding and can tolerate the idea that, like, it's hard to see this because it's something I love doing, but it's just not an opportunity anymore. And I'm glad that people I love are doing it well.
Yeah.
But yet he can't take this same knowledge and put that towards the Molly situation.
Of course not.
It's completely different.
It is. It's completely different.
That door
Wow.
will always be held ajar, no matter what. But yeah, I don't know. So I just found it really interesting that he has this clarity of the stables is my old life, and that's not a path I can take. But Molly, who knows?
He continues to feed the wolf cub as well and says that, my joy in being in the stables and Burrich and mine's renewed friendship doesn't prevent me from feeding this wolf cub.
Yeah.
Even though he feels a pang of guilt as he slips away each day to that cottage, he knows that he would lose Burrich again if Burrich found out.
If Burrich ever suspected that I had returned to using the wit, he would abandon me just as swiftly and completely as he had before.
Each day I asked myself exactly why I was willing to gamble his friendship and respect for the sake of a wolf cub. My only answer was I had no choice. I could no more have turned aside from cub than I could have walked away from a starved and caged child. Yeah. I mean, that's what Night Eyes was.
Right. Well, it just is an interesting comparison of how Burrich and Fitz see the wit, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Burrich has decided that this is such an evil and tainted magic that it must be turned away at all costs. It doesn't matter what that means. You need to cut out this part of yourself to be an honorable man.
Mm-hmm.
And Fitz doesn't see it the same way. And it's so sad because as awful as it is that Burrich really would cut Fitz out if he knew, it's also sad that Burrich is cutting out part of himself to fit in.
Right.
And I feel bad for him. And I understand because it is dangerous. People will kill people that have the wit, that it is a dangerous thing to show or indulge in. But I also think he's being too extreme because of living in that climate. And Fitz has just been so sheltered.
Living in that climate and his experiences as a young child with the wit.
Yeah. And I think it is a little bit that Fitz is sheltered. I mean, he has had traumatic things happen to him, but as the way of the world works, it's not the same type.
Right.
And so he hasn't had to associate the wit with something dangerous. I mean, dangerous in the sense that he'll lose his father, but not dangerous in the sense that somebody will kill you if they find out. So
right. Yeah.
I don't know. I feel really bad for both of them reading this part.
Burrich tried to prevent him and succeeded except for twice. The keen pain of losing my bond companions had convinced me Burrich was right. Only a fool would indulge in something that inevitably led to such loss. So I was a fool rather than a man who could turn aside from the plea of a beaten and starved cub. So he brings food, he brings blankets, and kind of makes this unused cottage serviceable as like a pen for Night Eyes.
Yeah.
No matter when I arrived, I found Cub waiting for me. I wonder why. It was not just the watchfulness of an animal waiting food. He sensed when I began my daily hike to the back cottage behind all the granaries and awaited me. He knew when I had ginger cakes in my pocket and too quickly became fond of them. Which is funny and cute, but Fitz is also super fond of ginger cakes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't But Fitz is... with this gradual coming and going, making Night Eyes lose his wariness and suspicion of Fitz, because gradually, he keeps bringing me food, whatever. And eventually there's some trust being built in between them, and the playfulness of a cub comes out, and he starts, trying to play with Fitz more. And Fitz is trying to keep that separation, even though he's super lonely.
Right.
And telling him, you can't go outside. There's people who are going to see wolf tracks and come here and probably kill you. Don't do anything. Don't make noise. And while
all men are bad.
Yeah.
He literally says all men are bad.
Yeah. And while Night Eyes, obeys him or listens, he doesn't concede him as a master.
Right.
So he still disobeys once in a while and still goes outside. And
it's only because he has pack seniority.
Yeah. Because he knows, quote, soon from Fitz that he'll be let out. Night Eyes asks him once in a while. Soon, Fitz will reply. And it slowly gets less and less.
Yeah. And Fitz is slowly forgetting to remind him.
Yep. And he says, a year from now, he would be one more wolf howling in the distance of the night. 2 chapters ago, or last chapter or whatever, that was a day to a week to a couple months to now a year. Oh, I'm not going to bond to this wolf. I'm not. It's fine. Delusions.
Right. But I also think that Night Eyes is such a mirror of what Fitz is going through.
Yeah, definitely.
He starts out sickly and then eventually regains some muscle and is going back to somewhat normal. He's still wary. It also says that Night Eyes bided his time until his decisions should be his own. And I think that's kind of what Fitz does, right? Fitz takes orders, or at the very least listens to them and repents when he has overstepped boundaries, but he doesn't really recognize that as true authority in the way that he's never questioning it.
Yeah, in his mind, he still is waiting for the day when he's his own man.
Yep. And so I think it really just shows how built for each other they really are.
It's a great parallel.
Yeah. And it also makes you think of Fitz as a caged wolf.
True. He gets unleashed sometimes. Yeah, it said, as the weeks passed and the storms outside reminded him of the snugness of his bed and the good meat filled out on his bones, he asked less often. Night Eyes asked less often. Sometimes I forgot to remind him. Loneliness ate at me from inside and out. At night, I would wonder what would happen if I crept upstairs and knocked at Molly's door. By day, I held myself back from bonding to the small cub who depended so completely on me. There was only one other creature in the keep who was as lonely as I was, which is false. The fool is also as lonely as you are, Fitz.
That's fair, but Fitz doesn't know that.
He remarked on it when he went to his room, though.
Well, that's
He's like,
true.
There's only someone as lonely as I am could
That's
make
fair.
a room like this.
I'm sure he stopped thinking about that, though.
Yeah, he conveniently forgets things.
True.
And then it moves on to Kettricken, speaking of the other lonely person in the castle.
The other outsider.
The other outsider, yeah. We know from the beginning of the chapter that he has been following Chade's directive and visiting her, but that was when he was super depressed and not taking care of himself, and they were both restive at their situations and very and down upon themselves.
And I wouldn't say he's necessarily following Chade's orders, because while he was going to visit her, I don't think he was doing anything useful.
No, he wasn't. He was just keeping her company, basically. Just to the letter and not the spirit of Chade's words.
Yeah, exactly.
And Kettricken is in a sewing room with Fitz, Rosemary, who we get an introduction to.
Yeah.
And 2 ladies who have accompanied her. All the other ladies having given their condolences of, not condolences, their excuses of their headaches, of not being able to attend that day, with apologies. And she is very morose and not doing much.
Right. And she's oblivious to the fact that these headaches are just a veiled insult,
Yeah. Little maid Rosemary, seated at her feet, giggled into her hands. Ugh.
Do you think Rosemary is a spy right now?
Yes.
Really?
Yep.
Okay.
100%.
Interesting. Okay.
Because
you were so quick to that.
Yeah, there's a point early next chapter where Regal does something, and it kind of reflects part of this conversation.
Oh, okay.
Because remember, Rosemary was taught to, like, she's 8 years old.
Mm-hmm.
That's when Fitz started learning how
Right.
to repeat conversations and stuff like that. And that's basically what she's doing.
Yeah.
So
That's-
yes,
yeah.
I think she's just like, hey, can you listen to exactly the words that they're saying and tell me at the end of every day? It's a little game. And that's what they're doing,
Fair
just
enough.
to get information.
Okay.
But yeah, Kettricken isn't really working on her needlework right now or anything. She is staring out what Fitz thinks to sea into the winter storm. But conveniently, the harbor is over in that direction as well.
Mm-hmm.
She is, wishing she can do more. And Fitz says, I'm only in the winter, weather keeps us indoors so much. There's only so much we can do. There's not much that's going on.
Right.
And Kettricken's like, that's not the case down at the shipwright's sheds. Her eyes got a strangely hungry look. It's all a bustle there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, good on her for pointing out, like, yeah, maybe women don't have a lot to do during what noble women don't have a lot to do. But
Here, at least.
Yeah, here. But I have eyes, and I am looking currently at a very bustling area where there are people at work.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Verity walks about there, overseeing it all, while I sit here with fancy work and prick my fingers and strain my eyes to knot in flowers and birds' eyes, so that when I am finished, it can be set aside with a dozen other pretty works. And one of the ladies who are attending her interrupt and say, oh no, it's never set aside, like, you're important or whatever.
right.
They're trying to curry favor.
Well,
and
yeah. And also, I mean, they seem to like her enough if they're still there. And
they're putting up with her for the political gains, I would guess.
sure. I don't want to be so sinister to say that they're all awful. Maybe they somewhat admire her.
That's true.
Or maybe they're just nice people and it's like, well, no, it's not so bad. But also, maybe they're a little bit offended because that's what they do every day. And it's like, no, we're not just setting these aside. They're works of art. So I would see how it could go either way.
Yeah. But Kettricken interrupts that and it's like, I would much rather be working on a boat, like actually doing
Real work.
real laborers' work here
Right.
to benefit the country that I am ruling, that I'm supposed to be helping to rule. And the two ladies are like, okay, can we get tea and cakes? Like, do you want some? And Kettricken kind of dismisses them, so they walk off to the side. So it's basically just Fitz, Kettricken, and Rosemary
Yeah.
at this point.
Which is kind of not nice of Kettricken to talk so down about an activity that these women that are around her probably enjoy.
That's exactly what Fitz points out later.
Right. And I mean, it makes me kind of sad because I get that she doesn't personally enjoy it, but some of these women do. And some of these women probably have never thought that they are capable of.
Yeah.
And she could be like, hey, ladies, we can do more than this. Let me teach you. Let's start a Taekwondo class or something. Like, we'll start working out and we'll show those men noble ladies can work too. But instead, she's just like, meh, girls are dumb. And that makes me very sad. But I get it because, she's taking her anger out on the people that it's easiest to take out on.
She's
which
also like
people do.
18 or 19.
Right. Also that. She can't be perfect. It's fine. I'll live.
There's only room for one perfect woman in this series, and that's Patience.
True.
So she says, if you wish them, go get them. I do not hunger or thirst. Instead, I fear I will grow fat as a pen goose, sitting at needlework and nibbling and sipping all day. I long to do something of significance. She makes a kind of clever quip here. She asks Fitz, like, if you didn't feel required to call on me every day, would you be sitting in your room doing needlework and stuff? And he's like, no, but then I am not the Queen-in-Waiting. And she's like, waiting. I understood well now that part of my title. A bitterness I had never heard from her before crept into her voice. And then she goes on a tangent about, the queen, we don't say queen in my land. Mm-hmm. We would say sacrifice, and I'd be doing things. all the work here is done by servants and you don't see any of the results. Maybe because it's such a populous place, but like we would be doing things.
I raised barns.
Yeah, raised barns, fetch water.
Fetch water.
Like all of these different things, because she was the sacrifice to help things going. She would work in the kitchen. She would bring in firewood, set out plates.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it would be really hard. That is a big culture shock, I think. I mean, you go from, you specifically are the person that is meant to do all of this for others. And it's a privilege in your culture to do this. It is something to be proud of. Mm-hmm. And then you move to this new culture where
none of that pride is taken and it's all invisible.
Yeah. And everybody looks down on you for having that pride or wanting to be able to enact that.
Yeah.
It would be so hard. And especially because you would feel even more restless than normal, mm-hmm. because there are things you can see that you could be doing and you're not allowed. And I do feel for her.
Super unfulfilling life to move to from where she was.
Yeah.
And she specifically mentions 3 people here who I'm sure were her friends. Mm-hmm. It just kind of reinforces, because I don't think we ever hear those names again. Mm-mm. But is Joffrun? Who was the woman from the Mountain Kingdom that was with the fool? I don't know. Maybe she appears, but like that would just be a little connection. But like that, those specific names, Kira and Senec and Joffrun, none of those people are here. Yeah. She's alone. She doesn't have any work to do. She's sitting alone in a room with women who are doing needlework that she doesn't care about.
Yeah.
She wants to be doing something or, talking to the people, but all the people are invisible and the results just appear around her.
Right.
And she's just so cooped up and annoyed with everything and just wants to be doing something of substance.
Right.
And Fitz is like, you can't be doing that here. We only have one queen. Mm-hmm. There are things that only a queen can do. And
oof, bad wording.
And Kettricken takes that completely to a logical conclusion, but not the one I think Fitz was talking about.
Right. Not logical to Fitz.
Yeah, not logical to Fitz.
But to every other human being, very.
I didn't even the first couple times I read this, I'm always like surprised at how
she made that jump.
Yeah.
Really? I feel like, I understand it. I feel like that's probably what she's been hearing.
Oh, that's true. She probably has.
Everybody's like, so when's the heir coming? And you're so important because you have an heir. And I'm sure as a woman who has been asked, when are babies coming? It's annoying. You hear it the first time, it's annoying, but I'm sure as a queen,
definitely
in this culture where that's literally one of her main roles, that'd be way worse. way worse.
And it mentions here again, Kettricken's little maid Rosemary sat on the floor by the tea table, dreamy-eyed, a sweet cake clasped in her small hands. I suddenly wished I were 8 years old again and could join her there. He also has a remark before Kettricken answers this, that briefly I looked at the ladies in waiting to remember who had chosen to attend their queen. Kettricken, I was coming to see, might not be the easiest of queens to attend upon.
Fair enough.
And Kettricken taking there are things that only a queen can do, takes that as, obviously it's only bearing an heir. I know of what you speak of. It's a duty I do not avoid, for I do not consider it a duty, but a pleasure. I only wish I were sure that my lord shared my sentiments. Always he was away and about the town on business. I know where he is today, down there, watching his ships arise from planks and timbers. Could I not be with him, with no danger to myself? Surely, if only I can bear his heir, only he can sire it. Why must I be confined here while he immerses himself in the task of protecting our people? That is a task I should be sharing as sacrifice for the 6 duchies.
Yes, queen. Snaps for the truth.
Yeah, definitely
It takes 2 people. Mm-hmm. And so why does he get to do whatever? Why does he get to put himself in danger's way? And she has to sit doing sewing, which I love sewing, but...
Which brings me partially back to kind of my sentiments about the six duchies. Yes, they have women in power. Yes, they are more, I don't know if this is the correct word, but egalitarian about, how that power is distributed. Like,
Sure.
people who have the talent can take that position and do what they want.
Yeah.
But it's also not like a perfectly equal society, because a lot of that comes from necessity, from how warlike and how many wars are being fought and raids and things like that. Hodd is the swordmaster because she is literally the best swordsman, and we need the best people to train our guards to
we
win.
have people fighting and coming to fight our people every year.
But it's still not like the queen and the king can do the same things.
Right.
It's still like the queen must be protected, the king must do the protecting. And she's like rebelling against that, because the Mountain Kingdom is much more like, we're all here to do
the same thing.
The same thing.
If you're capable,
make our people
you
survive.
should. It doesn't matter what's between your legs. Just do it.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I think it kind of makes me think of how Bingtown is described when it's first founded.
Yeah.
How the women are allowed to be in charge of things and build their homes, and they're farmers, and they're taking care of land and doing math and taking care of the accounting. And as time goes on, because it's a peaceful area, the women are put more and more into roles of just looks rather than power.
Or managing accounts at home, or
and even that's starting to be looked down upon. And I think it does kind of follow how society in the real world has kind of worked. I mean, in olden, like way olden times, women were also allowed to do more powerful jobs because the world was a harsher place. And somewhere a shift happens, and then like women need to be a fragile thing protected, and men get to continue to be strong. And so it's interesting that Hobb is able to write these societies at different places. Yeah. And based off of, the environment that they're in, they just have different levels of like women to men power level.
Their social development is really interesting to watch, because you have places like the newly founded cities on the pirate islands in Live Ship. You have, thinking back to the origin of the Six Duchies and the origin of the of Bingtown, like you said, they're all very equal because all of that work needs to be done. They're trying to survive. Yeah. The Mountain Kingdom was the same way, but they had someone step in, a prophet and a catalyst, who changed fundamentally how people are ruled there, which changed their culture. But then the comparison growing up from that egalitarian is like what you said. It's Bingtown. Slowly, like the women, and traditionally the women were doing all of the housework, the managing of the accounts, how the trades are done. The men went out and actually traded. And then they're getting more influence from Jamalia, and how those nobles are, and how Buckkeep is kind of transitioning to the same thing of, nobles are just becoming more, the noble women are just becoming more accessories. Yeah. Rather than people. Right. And it's really interesting, especially I really want to know more about Jamalia and like the history of that, because we hear some really interesting things, and I want to know more about that city, because I feel like it's one of the most developed cities that we see ever.
Yeah, that's fair.
Having gone probably from, those primitive, everything, we just need to survive, to men are taking more so because we're wealthy, to women being raised up as the companions to the satrap, and being like, they provide actual content and they're supposed to be experts in all their fields, and then transitioning back into the women are just here for decorations and stuff because of a couple bad leaders. Yeah. So I don't know. I just want more of the world in general, but a couple things stick out, and one of those is the history of Jamalia and the evolution of those societies. It's super interesting. Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. It's something that it's not as bad as Bingtown or Jamalia. but it's definitely a huge shift from what Kettricken is used to. And I'm glad she's calling it out. I think it's right. Because she has a point.
Yeah, she does. And it's true. Verity might not, at this point, he can respect her, kind of, and stuff, but he doesn't know her at all.
Right.
And like Chade said, like, if they had time, they could maybe grow to love one another and stuff, but they're in the middle of a war.
Right. And so that probably doesn't help because he has to go do these duties.
And Kettricken's not his type.
No.
Is what Fitz said.
Right. I think he enjoys her enough. I think he likes her more than he thought he would.
He just doesn't know her. He doesn't know that she has those passions.
Or has the need to like, hey, can you tell me that you enjoy my presence and our time together? Like,
relationships, man.
They're hard.
And Fitz is kind of taken aback by how upfront and blunt that response was, and closes the shutters to the outside because it's freezing in there, because it's a winter storm. And takes that as an excuse to whisper something to Kettricken. If you think that is the only duty that our queen bears, you are gravely mistaken, my lady. To speak as plainly as you have, you neglect your duties to your ladies, who are here this day only to attend upon you and converse with you. Think, could they not be doing this same needlework in the coziness of their own chambers, or in the company of Mistress Hasty? You sigh after what you perceive as a more important task, but before you is a task that the king himself cannot do. You are here to do it. Rebuild the court at Buckkeep, make it a desirable and attractive place to be. Encourage his lord and ladies to vie for his attention. Make them eager to support him in his endeavors. It has been long since there was a congenial queen in this castle. Instead of looking down at a ship that other hands are more capable of building, take up the task you are given and suit yourself to it. He finishes closing up the window, looks at her, and says, to my chagrin, she was as chastened as if she were a milkmaid. Tears stood in her pale eyes, and her cheeks were as red as if I had slapped her. I glanced at her ladies who were still taking tea and chatting. Rosemary, unwatched, was taking the opportunity to poke at the tarts carefully to see what was inside them. No one appeared to have noticed anything amiss. But I was learning rapidly how adept court ladies were at dissimulation, and feared speculation as to what the bastard might have said to the Queen-in-Waiting to bring tears to her eyes. I cursed my clumsiness, and reminded myself that however tall Kettricken might be, she was not much older than myself, and in a foreign place alone. I should not have spoken to her, but should instead have presented the problem to Chade and let him manipulate someone into explaining it to her. Then it dawned on me that he had already selected someone to explain such things to her. I met her eyes again and ventured a nervous smile. Quickly she followed my glance to the ladies, and as swiftly returned decorum to her face. My heart surged with pride in her.
I like that Fitz, number one, doesn't think lowly of what the queen's duties are. He doesn't think they're any less important than what Verity is out there doing.
Right, yeah.
But I also like that he turns this into like a mission, and you're not looking at this the right way, which is what people do to him all the time, which he needs.
Yeah, true.
And they are similar enough to where this helps. But he does. He says, yeah, sure, the baby thing, but also, like, we're in the middle of a war, and we need people to like Verity, and they don't right now. And you can do that. The king can't make people like him on his own. That'll just make him look like a jerk.
Yep.
But if you talk him up and are awesome, then all these people are going to start believing in Verity and Verity's causes, and that is your duty. And I think that helps Kettricken because it does give her a task that is something important and something that she could do.
Yeah, exactly. And he makes some good points. As much as, yes, Kettricken is perfectly able to go down there and learn how to build a ship and help out with things, they hired shipbuilders to do this.
Yeah, the best of the best shipbuilders.
And those shipbuilders cannot come into, it's like you said, cannot step into the castle, into the court, and talk to the ladies of the court and make them believe in what the king is doing.
Right.
So it really puts into perspective for her what she needs.
That just because she's being told her duties are to bear a child doesn't mean that's what's really going on.
Yeah.
And she probably has never had any practice with, like, court intrigue.
She hasn't needed to.
Yeah, so it's good to remind her that things aren't always as they seem on the surface here, to help her keep her guard up, but also help her fit in a little bit more. And I think that's a nice thing that Fitz did for her.
Yeah. And she asks what he suggests, and he replies that I am ashamed at how boldly I have spoke to my queen. I ask for her forgiveness, but also I suggest that she show these two loyal ladies some special mark of royal favor to reward them for their faithfulness, like bringing in a minstrel for the private gathering with just those three, to reward them and to show the other noble ladies that Kettricken is going to be a queen. She is going to show special loyalty to people who show loyalty to her and try to garner that power for herself. Kettricken remarks that it's something that Regal would do, and Fitz is like, yeah, probably. But his is from a place of spite. Yours is going to be a place from rewarding those loyal.
And you're not punishing people who aren't loyal to you. You're
not having a private gathering to punish those who are not there. You're having a private gathering to reward those who were there.
Yeah. Which, pretty fine line.
It's a very fine line. But we all know that Regal is good at this stuff.
Yep.
So the parallel is completely true. Like, it is something that Regal would do.
Which...
It's something that Shrewd would do. Like,
true. It is very interesting that Fitz is getting his ideas on what to do based off of what Regal does.
Well, I don't know if it's his specific ideas of what he would do. I think that mostly comes from, like, his training in Chade and stuff like that.
Right. But I mean, the idea of rewarding people close to you is something he probably picked up from watching Regal. And it really goes to show how much attention he is actually paying to Regal.
Yeah.
And how he is taking that knowledge and would be perfectly capable of using that to his own, benefit if he wanted to.
Right.
And it just shows that even if he doesn't necessarily love his duty and his job, he's not power hungry. It's just something he knows how to do, and he'll help other people use it.
And Kettricken's like, and the minstrel? Can you see if he's available or free tonight? And Fitz is like, my lady, he's free tonight. You're the Queen-in-Waiting. It's fine. And she kind of sighs and then goes to speak to the ladies there. And obviously they're very pleased with one another, with what they've done.
Right.
And like, yes, we knew this would pay off. Like, it's good. Like, she is nice. She is doing the correct thing in the court.
Right. It makes sense now.
Yeah, exactly.
I knew it would come around.
So he says that in that way, he became an advisor, and he kind of feels bad about tainting her with the scheming of the court and things like that. But at the same time, if he didn't teach her how to do this, she wouldn't be able to stand on her own later against Chade.
Right.
Like, so she needs to know it.
Right, and she wouldn't be able to understand the culture she's in.
Right, exactly.
So it's not necessarily tainting her, especially because I think she does it in her own way, and she learns how to use court intrigue as a way to bring forward a more loving society. That's not quite the word I'm looking for, but it's like kinder. She does it in a kinder way. But I also want to point out that the ladies that were with her were Lady Hopeful and Lady Modesty.
Yes. Fitz kind of reflects on the Regal remark, and he's like, yeah, she was right. They were Regal's tricks. She works them with higher ideals in kinder ways. But my intentions were selfish for both of us. Because I wanted her to gather power into her hands, and with it, bind the throne firmly to Verity in the minds of one and all. And I'm sure that's the same mindset that Chade goes through every single day of his life. Because we always ask, like, why is he so...
Yeah.
Why does he do this for all the time and whatever? It's that same kind of thing. Like, you just have so much faith and love for this one ruler or whatever. And it's like, I just want everything to work out,
Yeah.
basically.
And I kind of think this is why Chade put Fitz on this duty.
Yeah.
Because it's really good on-the-job training for taking over Chade's role.
Yeah, exactly. Because teaching somebody else is sometimes the best way to learn yourself.
True.
He also does report to Chade about, you know, how that progress is coming along, and Chade reports back like, these are the ladies that are in Regal's court that are now being nice to Kettricken, who you should avoid, that sort of thing. So it's kind of going both ways. They are still communicating like that, which is good.
Right.
But every evening he's still going to Patience, and Patience expects him to be there and still treats him like a full-on page and has him do whatever is on her mind that day.
Yep.
Copying scrolls, practicing the sea pipes, whatever. And he is just lost in the room looking for little hints of Molly the whole time. Seeing it at a candle here, her jacket on the back of a chair there, honey cakes, you know, anything like that. And it's, oh man, it's pretty creepy. But
yeah, a little.
We're inside Fitz's mind, so it doesn't seem that way.
Well, it still kind of seems
well, yeah.
It's less creepy knowing that, number one, he's not acting on any of these, like, he's not like actively stalking her or actually doing anything dangerous, and also he's a teenager, so like, this is the first time he's ever felt a crush, so of course he's gonna be weird about it. Like, we've all been there. Maybe not to this extent,
right,
but in some way or another, we were all a little creepy to our first crushes.
And he kind of goes through life at Buckkeep like that for a little bit. You know, seeing Kettricken every day, seeing Patience every day, reporting with Chade, making sure that transition and that teaching is going smoothly, looking for hints of Molly.
Yeah.
Every day.
But on top of that, going to a secret cub, a wolf cub, going to the stables, practicing exercises so he can build his stamina.
He's got a full schedule here.
He's a busy boy.
He's becoming, you know, he's settling into life for a little bit. And of course, at that time, King Shrew summons him. And he says, sometimes I thought to myself that I would rather be quietly killing for my king than to be so embroiled in all of these secretive schemes. But then King Shrew summoned me.
To remind him, no, I actually don't like either of these things.
Yeah, he really doesn't like either of them.
Nope.
But he attends Shrewd. He hasn't, you know, cut his hair recently because he cut it all off when he was really sick, and it hasn't really grown back really well, and hasn't shaved in a little bit.
Awkward length, and then he's like, "Oh, I should shave because Burrich keeps getting on me about that." And then he's cutting himself, and he's like, "Okay, never mind. I'm just gonna leave it. It looks great.
Better than blood."
Yeah.
And he runs face to face with Regal. And they kind of exchange. Well, Regal insults Fitz.
Right. Fitz tries, but in the only way he can.
It's more just like cold and like not so outward. Yeah. He replies in the only way he can by being cold and stoic and then not moving.
Right.
But Regal just remarks that he's having seizures or whatever, basically.
Yeah.
Basically rubbing in, I almost killed you and gave you seizures now forever.
What a jerk. But interestingly, they lock eyes there, and Fitz refuses to move. And Regal steps down first by pretending to flick imaginary dust off of his sleeve, and then walks around Fitz and keeps going. I did not step aside for him, and he did not jostle me as he once would have. So I think Regal's a little scared of Fitz.
Maybe a little bit.
He's a little beefy boy now. He's been working out a little. He's eating again.
He also gave a promise to Shrewd as well.
Not yet.
Huh?
Not yet.
Yeah, he did. Regal did. They apologized.
Well, he apologized. That's not a promise.
Well, no. But he apologized, and it was accepted. So I don't think Regal wants to tip his hand quite yet about anything. So he kind of has to act like...
I don't know. I think Fitz is getting pretty tall and built and is no longer a little boy. that's easy to shove around. And Regal is actually a scaredy cat.
That's true.
So he's like, I gotta act tough, but I don't want to fight this boy.
Yeah, so the new guardsman at the door, King Shrew's chambers, and Fitz is remarking like, I need to learn faces and names again because I'm getting too recognizable and I don't know people who are talking about me and who know me.
A bacon mongerer recognized him, which, I'm sorry, a bacon mongerer? How can I get that job?
Well, you don't just get to eat bacon all day.
Okay, never mind. I don't want that job then.
But the chambers are shocking to him. For some reason, does he still think he had just a dream in the Mountain Kingdom that one night? I don't know.
Maybe?
He'd expected to find the windows ajar to the brisk winter air, to find Shrewd up and dressed and alert at the table. But he was in his bedchamber, you know? And it was still, dark, and there's plates and cups around, and with a servant moving them around and stuff.
And the air is musty.
Yeah, like, isn't that the same way that it was in the dream before? Like, Fitz.
I don't think it was this bad in the dream, but yeah. And also, I mean, that's the middle of the night, not after servants have been in to clean,
True. But Fitz is kind of waiting for the servant to introduce him like the old servant would have.
Mm-hmm.
And so eventually Fitz just kind of approaches himself and like, hey, I'm here, by the way. And Shrewd opens his eyes and greets him and says, I do miss Cheffers with me for so many years, and I never had to tell him any more what I wanted done. I remember him, my lord. Where is he then? A cough took him. He caught it in the fall, and it never left him. It slowly wore him away until he couldn't take a breath without wheezing. I recalled the servant. He had not been a young man, but not so old either. I was surprised to hear of his death.
Murdered.
Yeah.
He was murdered.
A cough took him, huh?
Interesting.
And he was replaced by Wallace, servant who doesn't really know King Shrewd's ways, even though he's probably been with him a couple months. He is, quote unquote, healing Shrewd, or trying to.
Also, what kind of servant doesn't know the manners of introducing somebody that walks in? And he had to have known who Fitz was. Everybody knows who Fitz is. He looks just like his dad.
Right. So Wallace is here.
And he's not leaving.
He's just around. And Fitz asks after the sickness, basically. And Shrewd's like, it's annoying. It's not a sickness, really. Just giddiness. Sort of dizziness that sweeps down upon me if I move swiftly. Every morning I think it gone, but when I try to rise, the very stones of Buckkeep rock under me. So I keep to my bed and eat and drink a bit and then rise slowly. By midday I am myself. I think it has something to do with the winter cold, though the healer says it may be from an old sword cut, taken when I was not much older than you are now. See, I bear the scar still, though I thought the damage long healed. King Shrew leaned forward in his curtained bed, lifting with one shaky hand a sheaf of his graying hair from his left temple. I saw the pucker of an old scar and nodded. Now, I think there's two ways to go about this. One is that it's total BS, that if we assume that Wallace is the only healer that he's seeing, and Wallace is like feeding him stuff to keep him weak and whatever.
Is Wallace the healer? Or is there...
That's the other thing. If an actual other healer got brought in, I could see where that could totally be the case, where he sustained a traumatic brain injury in his youth, and even though it could be healed, long-term damage could have been sustained, and with older age
and stress,
it could be bringing out more symptoms.
Right.
I don't know. Wallace is definitely feeding him basically poison or slowly weakening King Shrewd. But also, it could definitely be that, because a sword injury, or I'm assuming a sword injury, sword cut to the temple is not great either.
No, probably not.
So I don't know.
I didn't think Wallace was the one healing him.
He's the one who gives him healings with like the herbs and the smoke and stuff.
Oh, I thought
later.
another guy came in with like that was like advising and was saying, "Oh, do this."
I'm pretty sure it's Wallace because in the dream as well, when Fitz / Shrewd is talking to the fool and saying like, "Oh, the healer was in here," whatever. Fitz is like, "Burrich?" And the fool replies, "Burrich, I wish you were. No, this Wallace knows nothing
that's right.
or whatever."
Good point. I forgot about that already.
Yeah. So Fitz assumes that he was brought in for a retelling of the events at Jean-Pay because he's been kind of ignored and that's like the only thing that's really happened.
Right.
But Shrewd's like, "No, it's done. Verity and I have consulted. I don't think there's much more that you could tell me that I don't know or could guess. We've spoken at length. I regret some things, but here we are, and here is always the place we must start from, eh?" Words swelled in my throat, nearly choking me. "Regal," I wanted to say to him, "your son who tried to kill me, your bastard grandson, did you speak at length with him also? And was it before or after you put me into his power?" But as clearly as if Chade or Verity had spoken to me, I knew suddenly I had no right to question my king, not even to ask if he had given my life over to his youngest son. I clenched my jaws and held my words unuttered. Shrewd met my eyes. And he recognizes the anger and the,
Well, yeah, Fitz is glaring at him, so
clenching his jaw.
a little hard to miss.
Yeah. So Shrewd dismisses Wallace very abruptly, like, "Hey, do whatever you want anywhere else from here." Like,
Leave.
just go away.
And Wallace looked displeased.
Yeah. He left the door ajar behind him, probably was going to try to eavesdrop, but
Right.
Fitz gets up after a motion from Shrewd and closes it. And Shrewd says, "Fitz chivalry, this will not do. Sometimes ambitious young men do foolish things. When they are shown the error of their ways, they apologize." I looked up suddenly, wondering if he expected an apology from me. But then he went on, "I have been tendered such an apology. I have accepted it. Now we go on. In this, trust me," he said, and he spoke gently, but it was not a request. "Least said is soonest mended."
Okay. First of all, Shrewd, you don't have any right to accept an apology of Fitz almost dying. Not how that works. You don't get to accept it. You weren't the one who had to almost die. Secondly, this isn't a little oopsie. He tried to murder 2 people of the royal family and almost succeeded. I hate it. I hate it here. It makes me so angry reading. Sometimes ambitious men do foolish things. Excuse me, what? Like,
Does Shrewd and Chade know that Galen tried to kill Verity?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I would assume they knew.
I don't know if Chade would understand because it involves the skill directly.
That's fair.
And I don't know. I would assume so as well, but we don't know what Verity would have said.
Right. That's fair. We don't know if and maybe Verity didn't say anything. But also, though, Galen did die. So, like,
Yeah.
nobody, Shrewd doesn't think.
I know, yeah.
That's odd. He touched my son while he was skilling and now he's dead. No correlation there. I don't know.
That's why I'm wondering, like, if most of that blame was shifted to Galen then instead of Regal, like in Shrewd's eyes.
Oh,
so
yeah.
he could accept.
It's like his mother.
Yeah.
It's never Regal's fault. It's
There's always someone to put blame on.
Okay, whatever.
And then Fitz controls himself and asks why Shrewd summoned him. Mm-hmm. And Shrewd explains the situation in the duchy of Bearns. Bearns?
Bernstein Bears?
Bernstein?
I think it's Burns.
I think it's Bearns too. Whatever. Duke Brondy of Bearns. Brondy.
Brandy?
Brandy, or, Brondo, I think, is the some sports drink in Idiocracy. It's got electrolytes, what plants crave. I don't know. It's
But
just
also love the idea that this person's parents were like, I want to name him Bronze, but I want to be unique about it. So Brondy.
I'm pretty sure it's his last name.
I don't know. I'm gonna say that this is a woman who is like McKaylee. It's so unique.
Well, brawn is strength, so it could have just been like,
Strengthy, but with an IE.
But in Bearns, there is someone who they brought into their court there, who was very charismatic, who was a very good fighter, and who is now usurping the loyalty of the men-at-arms there. Shrewd is very upset. Like, why do we even have to deal with this during a war? Honestly, like, I've granted the request, but he doesn't really want to take action himself, so we're gonna have you do it, basically.
Right.
Once more, you will bear the king's justice, Fitz. A young woman from Seal Bay had come to Ripplekeep to offer herself to Brondy as a warrior. He had been pleased to accept her, for she was both well-muscled and adept, skilled at staves, bows, and blades. She was beautiful as well as strong, small and dark and sleek as a sea otter. She had been a welcome addition to his guard, and soon was a popular figure in his court as well. She had not charm, but that courage and strength of will that draws others to follow. Brondy himself had grown fond of her. She enlivened his court and instilled new spirit in his guard. But lately she had begun to fancy herself as a prophetess and soothsayer. She claimed to have been chosen by El, the sea god, for a higher destiny. Her name had been Maja, her parentage unremarkable, but now she renamed herself in a ceremony of fire, wind, and water, and called herself Virago. She ate only meat she had taken herself, and kept in her rooms nothing that she had not either made herself or won by show of arms. Her following was swelling, and included some of the younger nobles, as well as many of the soldiers under her command. To all she preached the need to return to El's worship and honor. She espoused the old ways, advocating a rigorous, simple life that glorified what a person could win by her own strength. She saw the raiders and forging as El's punishment for our soft ways, and blamed the Farseer line for encouraging that softness.
Fair.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, not super well placed, but...
So she is circumspectly gathering followers for basically treason.
Yep.
Following old ways, like sacrificing a... was it an ox, or is it just a...
It's an ox, yeah.
Yeah, an ox on the cliffs, and... Duke Brondy doesn't want to act to remove her, because even though he knows this is bad, he would have to make his guardsmen choose between him or her.
Right. And that's dangerous.
It's very dangerous, because he doesn't know which way that would sway then.
Yep.
And he doesn't want to lose some of those guards. So Shrewd and Fitz are discussing this, and Shrewd's like, I have the opinion that her following would probably drop off drastically were she to be bested at arms, or have a severe accident, or become victim to a wasting illness that depleted her strength and beauty. I was forced to agree that was probably so, but observed that there were many cases where folks who died became like gods afterward. Shrewd said certainly, if the person died honorably. So Fitz is to go there and remove her from power dishonorably, however that may be.
Yeah.
So that's his task. But Shrewd abruptly changed the topic and then says, in Ripplekeep on Seal Bay, there's an old scroll that Verity Wish copied. Listing from all those from Bearns who had served the king in the Scaleless Coterie members. And there is also a relic from the Elderling times, from the days of Elderling defense of that city. Shrewd wished me to leave on the morrow to go to Seal Bay, copy the scrolls, and to view the relic and bring him a report of it. I would also convey to Brondy the king's best wishes and his certainty that the duke's unease would soon be put to rest. I understood. I love how circumspect Shrewd is about this stuff. Like it just brings me joy as a reader, even safe in his own rooms or whatever. He's just like, she probably wouldn't have a following if this happened or this happened or this happened. Oh, but in this place that we're talking about, I want you to go there and copy this scroll and do this. Like,
there's actual tasks to be done, but on the side, we'll get rid of a problem.
Exactly. It's an interesting problem. Like I enjoy this chapter for this like second part of this chapter. I don't know. It's interesting to me because we don't see it very often, and Fitz dislikes this part of his job.
That's fair.
It's interesting to see him like
talk it out
in the role. Yeah.
And it's nice to get to see Shrewd still as Shrewd.
Yeah,
Still a little bit himself. He probably thought of this plan himself. He also is doing something for an outer duchy, which is nice. I mean, he also has
duchy, but yeah.
Well, that's what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah.
But he kind of has to, though, because they're the ones who are getting attacked, and it'd be a little rude to be like, sucks to suck.
It's also his job.
I mean, technically.
And as he stood to leave, Shrewd asked him the customary question, which Fitz gives a little smile at. Do you feel I am keeping my bargain with you? Sir, I do, I said as I always had. Then see that you keep your end of it as well, he paused, then added, as he had never had before. Remember, Fitz chivalry, any injury done to one of my own is an injury to me. Sir, you would not injure one of my own, would you?
Then what about Fitz? How is that not an injury to you?
He got an apology out of him.
That's not the... Oh, he didn't make Regal promise to never kill Fitz again. And even if he did, I wouldn't trust Regal, but still.
We don't know that he did.
Fine.
He nodded slowly. He had wrung an apology from Regal, and from me my word that I would not kill his son. He probably believed that he had made peace between us.
No, he doesn't believe that.
No, he doesn't.
He just knows that Fitz will actually keep his word.
Yeah. Well, he knows that Fitz is more than capable of just straight up killing him somehow.
True.
If he was like vengeful, because he was trained as a literal assassin. So
fair. Regal isn't as capable, except he is, but
he is
in different ways.
Yeah. So he leaves. He leaves Shrewd's chamber with a new mission. He needs to replenish his poisons and has a bunch of things on his mind that, he finally kind of crushes that, not the hatred against Regal, but like that burning desire or the idea that he was going to get revenge because he needs to keep his promise to his king. He is a king's man. He's doing this for the kingdom.
And it makes him feel better as a person. It's for him, not Regal.
Yeah. It's
fair enough.
Take the high ground as you roll your eyes.
I'm just really mad about it, okay?
And he meets Serene on the stairs. Serene, who has taken over Galen's coterie after August retires, and has the skill burned out of him because she's the strongest. The next strongest. And he freezes like he didn't freeze at Regal. At confronting Regal. It's that old reflex, he says. And all of Galen's hate for Fitz has transferred to Serene.
Right. Which it's worse because Galen's was kind of skilled into him. Serene's is just hatred, like actual
learned hatred, yeah. Real bad. Maybe Galen's skilled that hatred in. Who knows?
Fair enough. Who knows? I wouldn't put it past him.
But also, I don't think he did. I think he was just that culty.
That's fair. Everybody drank the Kool-Aid.
She reminded me too vividly of past abuses and inspired in me a dread that would not yield to logic. I had avoided her since my return, but now her gaze pinned me.
Also talks about how she has taken up Galen's aesthetic. And how her hands look like claws. And I just think that's an interesting little detail that Fitz skipped about Galen, because now I'm thinking of like...
Well, he didn't specifically describe every part of Galen, but like he literally bony. Like did not eat. Yeah.
Yeah. But I just like the imagery of claws.
And their clothes, I'm sure, are extremely tight and form-fitting because it has to be like as plain and minimum as possible.
She also got rid of her femininity.
Yeah, her femaleness was gone.
Which makes sense because he hated females.
Yeah.
So anything to get rid of that negativity that was put towards her, I guess.
Exactly. And she confronts him and says, you did not die in the mountains. No, I did not. Still, she stood there blocking my way. Very quietly, she said, I know what you did. I know what you are. Inside, I was quivering like a rabbit. I told myself it was probably taking every bit of skill strength she had to impose this fear on me. I told myself that it was not my true emotion, but only what her skill suggested I should feel. I forced words from my throat. I, too, know what I am. I am a king's man. You are no kind of man at all, she asserted calmly. She smiled up at me. Someday everyone will know that. Fear feels remarkably like fear, regardless of the source. Eventually, she stepped aside to allow me to pass. I was glad I was leaving the keep for a few days.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it actually is her skill trying to fear him, or his fear?
I feel like it has to be her skill, at least a little, amplifying what he already feels, just because, like, he suffered a lot under Galen, but not under Serene. Serene didn't do anything to him that we know of, really. I mean, she looked down on him and sneered at him or whatever, but yeah. I don't think she was, like, actively hitting him or anything, or telling him to go kill himself. So I don't think it's... But then also he has such a strong wall, I can't imagine she could break it. So maybe it is a fear. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I think he's pretty afraid himself and just kind of deluding himself that it's all of her skill, just trying to get himself over that. No.
What if this is like a wit thing and he's feeling her fear towards him? Because he basically killed Galen, and like what we saw last chapter, that sometimes the wit takes over. Like with Night Eyes, he just was feeling those emotions and couldn't separate that. And maybe if the emotion is strong enough, like with Serene to him,
could be.
And I mean, obviously he's probably not showing that he's scared, so I'm sure she could do the same. Maybe she's not that scared of him, but maybe it just compounds his own fear, added with another person's fear of him because of what happened.
Definitely could be. What do you think she's talking about when she's saying, I know what you did, I know what you are?
Killed Galen. Murderer.
But what about you're no kind of man at all?
Bastard. I feel like I'm answering one of those question sheets from school.
I think she's either... I don't think they suspect that he's witted, but
no.
I think she's still referring to, like, you're just getting strength from Burrich, basically.
Well, see, that's an interesting take, because she is taking strength from the king. So what does that say about her? Or is it just always different if it's not yourself?
It's always different. Come on.
I guess. But I'm just saying, I don't
apply logic to this. It doesn't work that way.
It doesn't make sense to, like, I don't know. Maybe it's whatever. Maybe they don't make sense. It's fine.
And then it skips forward a little bit to him getting to Bearns, starting this mission. And Fitz says that he met Virago, for she herself was a guest at Ripple Keep while I was there doing my scribe tasks. She was as Shrewd had described her, a handsome woman, well-muscled, who moved lithe as a little hunting cat. She wore the vitality of her health like a glamour. All eyes followed her when she was in a room. Her chastity challenged every male who followed her. Even I felt myself drawn to her and agonized about my task. Obviously, she has an incredible sense of presence,
right,
and a charisma to be a natural-born leader.
Right. Is it charisma, or is it like skill or wit or some other magic we don't know about?
I don't think so. I guess it could be, but I feel like we would get more description about this.
That's fair. That's fair. I was gonna say, like, maybe it's just untrained and she doesn't even know what she's doing is weird. But
I feel like we would get, like, if it was a wit, basically like the opposite of repelling or whatever, like attracting people to you, it would be more focused on animals and stuff. It's usually not a person to person thing.
But it does work person to person because Burrich can calm people.
Yeah, it just doesn't work as well,
I guess. But I mean, you're already pretty and
I don't
strong.
think she would do animal sacrifices if she was connected that much at the wit either.
That's fair. That's a good point.
And skill, it could be because of Fitz's like fleeting ability. Mm-hmm. He would not recognize it, but being
also, his
untrained,
walls are up. Yeah, I guess
you wouldn't be able to. Yeah, his walls were really high, and I don't know. I just feel like it's a natural thing, or it could be in as of yet unmentioned. I don't know.
That's fair. Some people are just like that.
Yeah. But it kind of surprised me. Like, obviously, she is incredibly beautiful.
Yeah.
And, like, very fit and very good with weapons and stuff. Where did she come from?
Right?
Like, all of a sudden, just kind of showed up at, like, this duke's place and, like, hey, I'm really good with swords and stuff.
Yeah, like, she wasn't noticed before this. Interesting. Yeah. Maybe she was planted there by the White Prophet. Maybe. Or maybe she just really lived in the middle of nowhere and was like, I'm tired of this. I'm tired of this, Grandpa. That's too damn bad. It's a great meme. Anyway.
So, first evening that they're there, she was seated across from me. So Duke Brondy seated them near the head of the table, across from each other.
Yep.
And he made me feel very welcome indeed, even to having his cook prepare a certain spicy meat dish I was fond of. Libraries were at Fitz's disposal, and services of the lesser scribe. His youngest daughter had even extended her shy companionship to me. I was discussing my scroll errand with Celerity, who surprised me with her soft-spoken intelligence. And Celerity, later on, we know has the wit.
Yes.
Midway through the meal, Virago remarked quite clearly to her dining companion that at one time bastards were drowned at birth. The old ways of El demanded it, she said. I could have ignored the remark, had she not leaned across the table to smilingly ask me, have you never heard of that custom, bastard? And Fitz, in his head, is seething, because he's like, I was literally planted here as the most obvious bait. I have never been used so clearly in my life. Yep. Like, just so upfront with everything. This is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. But he's prepared.
Yeah, luckily he came prepared to do something, because otherwise he would just been
floundering, and it would have been
seated
worse.
Across from someone who was prepared there to attack somebody from the Farseer family, basically.
Yeah.
And they have a confrontation here. They are arguing back and forth, and Fitz reminds her that, of those guest rights that we were talking about before, the honor of being a guest, of being a companion in arms.
Yeah, you don't spill blood in the home of someone that you've eaten bread from.
Yeah, exactly.
Or salt, I guess.
She has a knife out and plants it really close to the arm of Fitz. Fitz doesn't blink because he was expecting something like that. Mm-hmm. He gets her to admit that she hasn't sworn loyalty to King Shrew, and that gets some mutters going, so he realizes that everyone's kind of paying attention and was ready for this.
Well, she also starts talking crap about his mom.
Yeah.
And about how, like, what did her family think of her? Which is just gross and ugh.
How did your mother's people accept her whoredom? I smiled pleasantly. I suddenly had fewer qualms about my task. Yeah.
Yep.
And kind of implies that she's a traitor to the king.
Yeah.
Circumspectly, and that's when the knife comes out.
Yep. He's like, I thought you followed the old ways. You're not supposed to spill blood. And she's like, do you see any blood? Which, pretty good comeback if I do say so myself.
Yeah. And then, yeah, she admits that she has sworn no loyalty to the soft Farseer king. And folk are like listening in, and he says, so some had come to witness her challenge me at Brondy's table. All of this had been as carefully planned as any battle campaign. Would she know how well I had planned also? Did she suspect the tiny package in my cuff? And then he pitches his voice and makes it carry to everybody listening in, asking them to go to Buckkeep,
Right.
enlist, fight the Red Ship Raiders, who are the common enemy, the ones actually doing damage.
Yeah.
You know, be loyal. Don't waste your talents spilling bull's blood down a cliffside by moonlight when that same meat might go to feed everybody else who's been attacked by the Red Ships. And here he says, I found myself caught up in my own words, for I believed them. I leaned across the table over Virago's plate and cup to thrust my face close to hers as I asked, tell me, brave one, have you ever lifted arms against one who is not your own countryman? Against a Red Ship crew? I thought not. Far easier to insult a host's hospitality or maim a neighbor's son than to kill one who came to kill our own. And when he does that, he tips a little of that tiny package in his cuff into her cup and to her plate.
Yep. And then it's revealed that Virago is not a good speaker. Words are not her strong suit, which is the opposite of Fitz. He's really good at talking.
Yeah.
So
She just spits at him.
yeah, she just spits, which is gross. Especially nowadays. Like, ew. I have a worse fear of being spit on now. But this is when Duke Brondy...
Well, not before Fitz challenges her.
Oh, that's true.
The whole point of this, get her riled up and then challenge her as, you know, she actually spat in his face, like,
Right.
you know, perhaps a week hence on the cliffs where you so boldly slew the cow's husband, perhaps I, a scribe, might present more of a challenge than your bovine warrior did.
Which was pretty good.
And then Duke Brondy jumps in.
Yes, Duke Brondy jumps in and says, don't fight here. This is my table. How dare you? As though he has no idea this is going to happen.
Right.
And, you know, they decide, they both say their fake sorries and go about the meal.
And the rest of the week, he does his tasks.
Yep.
He copies the scroll and viewed the elderling relic, which looked like nothing to me so much as a glass vial of very fine fish scales. I think that's elderling skin.
Yeah, I think so too. That's what I was going to say. I don't think it would be actual dragon scale.
No.
Because they're way big.
Yep.
But so I wonder if that comes from like somebody murdered an elderling and this is what's left, you know?
Yeah,
Ooh, don't like that thought.
From the elderling defense of the city, so
Yeah. I don't imagine they gave it willingly. Although it does, like, dragon stuff does heal people.
That's
so maybe like elderling scales still hold some healing properties.
Maybe.
I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, they try on Selden and it works later. Like the Duke of Chalced is eating Selden and he's
That's
like
true.
getting better.
Ooh, yuck. I don't like that thought.
Yeah.
Because that really makes me feel like the vial is a dead person. Well, obviously it's a dead person, but like they killed somebody. Ooh, yucky.
Celerity seemed more impressed with me than I was comfortable with.
Ooh.
The other side of the coin was facing the cold animosity in the faces of those who sided with Virago. It was a long week. But he never had to fight the challenge because before the week was out, Virago's tongue and mouth had broken out in the boils and swords that were legendary punishment for one who lied to arms companions and betrayed spoken oaths. Wonder if Fitz knew that beforehand with his little package and then specifying a week in the future. Like the last day I'm here, hey, when the poison has time to work.
Right. But also, do you think that makes them think that she actually had sworn an oath to the king and she was just lying to everybody about it?
Maybe. I don't know.
Clever.
Yeah. But this happened a couple days in, or 3 days, or 4 days in, or whatever. It doesn't really specify. But she was not really able to eat and drink, and so disfiguring was her affliction that all those close to her forsook her company for fear it spread to them as well.
Right.
So she was like in a ton of pain because she couldn't go outside.
Yeah.
Because the pain was that bad.
Well, if you like sores on your mouth, yeah, like inside and
tongue,
outside.
yeah.
Oh, I hate that.
Yeah. The wind would be, especially in cold like winter.
Yuck.
Yeah. So, and no one was willing to stand her challenge for her because superstition and...
These are a superstitious lot.
I waited on the cliffs for a challenger who never came. Celerity waited with me, as did perhaps a score of minor nobles that Duke Brondy had urged to attend me. We made casual talk and drank entirely too much brandy to keep ourselves warm. As evening fell, a messenger from the keep came to tell us that Virago had left Ripple Keep, but not to face her challenger. She had ridden away, inland, alone. Celerity clasped her hands together and then astonished me with a hug. We returned chilled but merry to enjoy one more meal at Ripple Keep before my departure for Buckkeep. Brondy sat me at his left hand and Celerity beside me. You know, he observed to me toward the end of the meal, your likeness to your father becomes more remarkable every year. All of the brandy in Bearns could not have defeated the chill his words sent through me. End of chapter 5.
Ooh.
First off, I like the little crush that Celerity has, and I think Celerity would be a good match for Fitz.
Because they're both witted?
They're both witted. She's very intelligent as well.
That's
and
fair.
Very courageous and strong, as it shows later.
That's true. That's a good point.
And she likes him, and I think like he could grow to like her as well. For a political match, I think that would be the one to...
If he was a real prince, yeah, that would be a good...
I mean, personally, I like Kettricken and Fitz together more.
She's already married.
She's already married, though, so she's taken.
She's about to be a widow, though.
But, yeah, I like Celerity. But Chade's words came true.
Yep.
Duke of Bearns, looking at him like, hey, you look a lot like your father, and, you know, you're acting a lot more like him, too, you know? Mm-hmm. Good diplomacy, you're a pretty good leader out here. Resemblance is getting better and better every year.
Yeah, which is funny because to me right now Fitz is like a pimply teenager and like is super awkward looking.
He's the protagonist. He has clear skin.
Yeah, you're right. I forgot. There's magic in that protagonist's life.
Although it would be very Fitz just to have the only acne in all of 6 duchies.
No, that's not possibly true, but it kind of does feel like how Fitz would feel about the situation.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see what happens with Brondy, yeah. Duke Brondy.
Duke Brondy of Bearns. Maybe he'll approach him in a dungeon somewhere.
Maybe.
In the future. Yeah, this is introduction to a lot of plot points later in this book. Duke Brondy, like we just mentioned. Celerity pops up when Fitz asks Shrewd for a hand in marriage, and Shrewd assumes it's Celerity.
Yep.
And he's very pleased, and then gets really mad when he says, like, no, it's just a serving girl.
Yeah.
Wah,
wah.
Yeah. But we got Rosemary as well popping up here.
Mm-hmm.
And Fitz is really taking control of his life. He's actually gotten ahead of it for one of the few times. And I think he's not necessarily loving his job, but he is living life and not being miserable.
Yeah.
Which is a great thing.
Yeah.
And it's a good thing to read about.
That's true. Yeah, it is nice to get a break from mopey Fitz.
He doesn't like his tasks of, you know, scheming or doing the king's justice in any way, but he's good at it.
That's true.
And he wants to be good at stuff. And he's still he's still lonely, but he's definitely bonded with Nida.
Oh, 100%.
I don't know. Fun chapter. I like this chapter quite a bit.
It's a good one. So do you think Fitz is happy this time?
I think he's content. If it stayed status quo like this for ever, he would be okay. He wouldn't necessarily be super happy.
Yeah.
But I don't think he would be miserable.
That's fair.
I mean, he would eventually be miserable, because if it stayed like this forever, he would be separated from Molly forever. So he would
Yeah,
just
but he would learn to love celerity. Probably.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Eventually, maybe. I think he would still pine for Molly.
That's fair.
Yeah, it's a good one.
It was.
If you have any topics you guys want to talk to us about, please let us know. Visit our website at isfitshappy to listen to the next episodes, or email us at isfitshappy@gmail.com. Follow us on social medias. Tell your friends about the series so they can read it, and then point them in our direction so we can talk to them too. Don't forget to review, subscribe, follow on any of your favorite podcasting apps.
Can't wait to see what happens next week. Okay, so now we get to talk about listener stuff, and also, woot woot, my mic is back to normal.
Yeah. Yes. Thankfully. I actually have no idea what was wrong with it, but don't need to concern you guys with that. We'll just double check the sound before every episode goes. We record every episode, so.
Yeah. Always fun to record a 3-hour-long episode and realize the sound is really bad.
Yeah. So again, sorry for that, but I think it's better this time. So
fingers crossed.
Yeah.
So today we're gonna talk about we're gonna start off talking about some emails we got. First, I want to shout out to Nat. They talked a little bit about, first of all, how we have been wrong. We keep saying that Will is the one who is killing Shrewd.
Killing Shrewd, yeah.
It's not Will. It's Serene and Justin.
Yeah, because Fitz chases them through the halls later or whatever.
Yeah, so poor Will.
Will does do that.
Yeah.
Just not to Shrewd.
Right. He's just not as bad.
Yeah.
But so sorry, Will, for accidentally.
He is like the bad
He's
one.
worse. But sorry, Will, for misclaiming that you're killing the king.
Right.
But also, they let us know that, or brought up the point that Galen probably taught them a little bit of how to do what he was doing, but was also keeping control to make sure they weren't going overboard.
Yeah, like that Galen has probably been siphoning off Shrewd's strength for a while now, but since his command of the skill is much higher than the other people that he trained, because he was trained by an actual skill master, he was able to, moderate what he was doing.
Right.
So when he died...
Yeah, there's nobody to remind people to moderate, and they could be getting greedy, potentially.
And so it causes more of that, Shrewd's mind going quicker.
And they also brought up that Shrewd's slow wasting and wandering mind and severe pain is really similar to the symptoms of a king's man who has been used too hard and too often, which is a really good thing to point out because I've never thought about his symptoms compared to someone who was being affected by the skill or using too much of the skill, which would probably be what this feels like. So that was like a really good point out.
Yeah.
Or thing to point out.
And most of the stuff, the drugs that he uses are to dull the pain. So, and one of those things once in a while is elf bark for like when Chade deems that he needs energy to do something, like at a function.
And it's also helping because it's blocking off skill from other people being able to affect him.
Yeah. So on those special occasions when he takes like an elf bark tea or something, Shrewd is up and he seems to do pretty well.
Right.
And Chade just thinks it's the energy from elf bark, not the elf bark's ability to block Justin and Serene draining his skill.
Right. Which is sad because if they knew, then they could realize what was going on sooner and help Shrewd. And it's just kind of sad.
Yeah. But also like taking elf bark constantly
really
would
bad
really
for you.
make you depressed.
Yeah, definitely. And they also pointed out that Galen was probably so quick to accuse Fitz of taking Burrich's strength because he has been doing this for forever.
Just
and it's
projecting.
like, yeah, like a cheater in a relationship who assumes because they're cheating, you are too.
Mm-hmm.
He assumes there's no way Fitz could be stronger than him. So the only possibility is that he's stealing strength from somebody.
Yeah. It was awesome thoughts about
Yeah.
the whole situation there from a slightly different angle and different details filled in.
Yeah.
So
it's very nice to hear.
Yeah. Quick mention about Galen again while we're on that topic.
Mm-hmm.
There was a message from Carrie about the first book and how it is it asking us a question, is it if it's a inconsistency with Hobb's writing that a bastard was allowed to train for a skill master position, and if Queen Desire had that much pull right away. And basically it came down to she was established as a Duchess of Pharaoh, very powerful in her own right, and she decided to become the queen. She wasn't forced to or anything, or love shrewd for it. She decided because that's what she thought would give her more power. So coming from an established court, she brought people over that she knew and she trusted, and sycophants and all that sort of stuff, and Galen was one of them, and Shrewd probably didn't know that he was a bastard right away.
Right.
Or was blinded by his love because it was a love marriage, not political. Mm-hmm. So she was able to sneak Galen in there and be trained up.
Right.
But also, Chade and Shrewd, once they found out, probably didn't care because of their attitudes that bastards need to be tied and loyal and useful to the crown. Otherwise, they are loose ends or liabilities later on. So
yeah. So moving away from Galen talk, I want to talk about Shane's message to us. Shane was talking about how he thinks Verity was snapping on Fitz for having a little bit of a tood. Was more related to the fact that he looks like his older brother and is talking like his older brother, and it's just that feeling of your older brother talking down to you that really just rubs you the wrong way, and that's why he's able to snap back from it so quickly, just because it wasn't really a malice or a bad place that he's going to. It's just, oh, my brother did that all the time, and now his son is just like him. And I thought that was a good point, that it probably is just a familiar sibling thing that you get tired of. I'm sure I'm not the youngest, so I don't know what it's like.
Yes, well, we've had a couple good angles on that relationship now, and I really like the speculation, because all of them are possible, whether it's the nephew trying to assert some authority and then the uncle just trying to set them back down, no, I appreciate you, but you're still younger than me, or if it's the reminding him of the older brother. There's a couple good ones. So thank you. It's
really cool on things like this when you see a lot of different takes. It reminds me why I like reading, because we all just can get so much out of the same thing. None of us are reading different books. It's just our own life experience that colors what we read. But they also agree with Luke and said that Buckkeep is not built on skill stones.
Yeah.
So
it does have a portal stone in the basement, and it is, I think, described the same way that skill stone is, but it doesn't have that skill set in it.
Right. And I concede that
it's like a black fortress or something.
If it were skill stone of any type, there would probably have been mention of Fitz seeing people in the castle that weren't there.
The memories or whatever. Yeah.
So I don't know. So moving on to Facebook. Last chapter, Benjamin brought up that Queen Desire couldn't have told Regal because if Regal about Chade, because if she knew, everybody would know. So she definitely didn't know. And also brought up the good point that Kettricken's position in court is made more difficult for her because she's entering during a time without a queen, and the last queen in the castle is Desire. So having to live up to Desire would be really hard for Kettricken, and especially the people that Desire has kind of cultivated, the culture she's cultivated in the castle. It's very cutthroat.
Literally opposite of what Kettricken is about.
Yeah. So it would be a real struggle.
Mm-hmm. If she followed Constance, it would be a much different situation.
Right. It'd probably be a lot easier.
Yeah. But that's definitely a good thought about Queen Desire not telling Regal about Chade. And it kind of goes along with my thought that she probably knew Chade when he was at court before his accident. And then when he went off, he remained dead to her even when he came back.
Yeah.
So that's... I think that falls in line pretty nicely. But yeah, I can't see her not telling Regal and Galen about, well, Shrewd has a half brother. So.
Yeah, exactly. And finally, Irene brought up from chapter 3 that Regal's punishment probably was used more as a way to get him away from the adorable, loving prince image that he has cultivated, because now he's having to ask people for money for a cause that he doesn't personally believe in. And so it kind of gave Verity a little bit more roundness to a character, the reading that they did of him. And I appreciate it because, Verity, I don't want to believe that Verity is naive or just trying to get rid of a chore that he doesn't like doing.
Also probably that, though.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit fueled by that. And I think it is naive of him not to realize the power he is wielding.
Right.
But it is a good point that there's more to it than just now you have full control of the castle. It's also... now you have the dirty work of asking people for money who don't want to give any money.
Nobody likes the tax collector.
Nope. So there is a little bit more to it than I think either of us were giving credit to.
We had some comments on chapter 4, part 1 as well. First, a shout out to Joel, who is the one who reminded us that the horse with two saddles conversation was about Burrich. I had finished the recording, thought, wow, that went so well, heard the audio issues, which was another thing to deal with, and then started reading chapter 5 and realized I was completely incorrect. Went back and saw Joel had already written something out as well. So thank you so much for mentioning that. Yeah, it's definitely fun to see you proved incorrect, like literally the next chapter, because we can actually make corrections quickly instead of...
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah. And it's also fun whenever we forget details and you guys tell us. It's like, oh, I can't believe I forgot that. But luckily you guys know. So.
But yeah, definitely a man can't wear two saddles or have two saddles. And he chose Chivalry's saddle instead of Patience's. So.
Right.
And then Antinous commented about how... we were talking that Patience's reaction to Fitz courting Molly could be related to how Burrich brought Fitz up, basically. And they mentioned that it could also be related to Chivalry because he did have out of marriage relationships too, not setting the best example for his son. Which, yes, but again, they weren't married when he had that relationship.
Right.
So, just want to make that correction clear again.
Make sure everybody knows where we stand.
Stop this chivalry slander, okay?
Make chivalry perfect. Just let him be. So, yeah, thank you guys all for reaching out. we enjoy seeing it. We enjoy the new people. We enjoy people who've been writing to us from the beginning. It's really good to hear from you guys and get your opinions. Nice and fun.